Otherwise, we will be a lone voice in the desert. So the fact that we now have the Sendai Framework for disaster risk reduction is a huge collective effort. And it's the framework that takes us into the future. It's a contribution to ensure that the vision for the post-2015 development agenda that everyone is working hard to get through this year will be sustainable. That's where we need to put the Sendai Framework. I think Mrs. Rodapi has already mentioned the upcoming meeting in Cameroon next week, which will actually set the roadmap for Africa. It's the 7th meeting. Your high-level meeting has already endorsed the Sendai Framework, but they asked the partnership to do a review and to design a new roadmap. So that's happening next week, and this is just to highlight how quickly we move from words to action. When it came to Sendai, was adopted less than 4 months ago, and already countries are very busy taking action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for outlining the UNICR's support around the coordination result of the program. I now call on Mr. Hardwick Schaffer, who's the Vice President of Operations Policy and Country Services of the World Bank Group, to outline some of the results they will be supporting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, colleagues on the panel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here at the launch of this very important partnership on building resilience to natural hazards in Sub-Saharan Africa. This follows right on the agreement of the Sendai Framework on disaster risk mitigation. And for the World Bank, I would like to reassure everybody and reconfirm our strong and wholehearted commitment to this partnership. Why? Well, because Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, is one of the priorities for the World Bank. I personally have worked in Africa for 18 years. I have seen natural disasters in Malawi, from flooding to the Horn of Africa drought to the Sahel drought. And when you work on Africa as an economist, you very quickly realize that a natural disaster can throw a country back by 5 years, can erase the economic gains that have been made over half a decade. But not only at the national level, also at the personal level. You see farmers being trapped in a perpetual poverty spiral, because you know that if you have a drought once in 5 years, you know you can work hard for 4 years. In the 5th year, this is being wiped out. So this is why we need to do much more with regard to resilience, building resilience, bringing in the private sector through financial instruments, and making sure that that farmer gets out of that poverty trap. I'm very happy to see that in the World Bank we have 22 countries out of 48 Sub-Saharan African countries that are actually having a disaster risk mitigation strategy that they are working on, and 15 more will come. If I look at the country strategies, and this is in my current job, I'm looking at all the country assistance strategies. We have 1 out of 3 countries in Africa where disaster risk management is one of the strategic pillars. That means resources, that means knowledge and analysis, and the dialogue will focus on disaster risk management. Second, I'm very happy to see this strong partnership, bringing together the African Union, the European Commission, the African Development Bank, and UNISDR. This is a strong partnership. I've seen how on the ground, how the African Development Bank, how the EC, how we are working together to try to tackle some of the challenges. Personally, I'm very happy to see that this partnership between the European Commission and the bank is still strong. I used to work in the European Commission on a secondment in 96 to 98, and I always say my best 2 years in the bank was when I was in Brussels. So I'm very happy to see that we are still working together and making this a very strong partnership for the benefit of the African countries. Third, in my current role as Vice President for Operations Policy and Country Services, I'm also in charge of our instruments. And one of the efforts is to make our instruments much more conducive to what is currently needed by our clients. It is no longer the simple one-size-fits-all project that we had in 20 years ago, but we need to make sure that we use our project, our resources, our instruments to better leverage the private sector. And I think this is one of the areas where we need to look at insurance instruments, at risk mitigation instruments that are quite different from a regular infrastructure instrument. For the two areas where the World Bank is in the lead, let me say a few things. The first one is results area 2. That is capacity building in coordination with the RECs, with the regional economic commissions. And we are going to focus on ECOWAS, on ECAS, on EGAT, and then SADC. We're also going to work with the academic organizations. The aim is here to build capacity in those organizations for a stronger risk identification, for a stronger risk information system, make the data available so that we get better early warning systems across the continent, so we get a better response, and we have better capacity for recovery plans. In this case, the World Bank stands ready to bring our global knowledge to ensure that there is cross-learning, one, in Africa, from African countries to African countries, but also cross-learning South-South from our experience in South Asia and East Asia. The second area is results area 5, and that is regarding the African Disaster Risk Financing Facility, or Financing Initiative. This is what I said earlier. We need to make sure that our instruments are conducive to the needs of our clients. Here, we stand ready to bring in the private sector. What we found out in other areas of the world is that the capacity, the institutional capacity to involve the private sector in financing instruments is not there. There's no appetite of the private sector, there's no pricing, there's no data, there's no information. So what we need to do is we need to generate and make available and use the data on better risk management. We need to include this data into the decision making, and we need to develop financial resilience strategies. With these strategies, then, we need to develop the instruments. From our side, knowledge sharing is again very much key. We have recently done these instruments in the Pacific countries. We also have experience in Southeastern Europe, and we have experience in Latin America. So bringing this all together and to bear fruit for the African countries is absolutely critical. There's one key knowledge event that is coming up here in November 17 to 19 here in Addis. It's Understanding Risk and Finance Conference. It's bringing the risk and the finance aspects together. Again, let me thank you all for having me here. I'm excited about this partnership, and on behalf of the World Bank, I would like to assure you of our full commitment to make this a successful partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shaver, for bringing the World Bank's experience and particularly capacity building across Africa. I think that's very useful, and of course the knowledge management that you bring to the program, the partnership. Our other partner is from the ClimDev Special Fund of the African Development Bank. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Justice Kabimera just to outline some of the results that they will be supporting for the program. Thank you, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Commissioner, Her Excellency Rhoda Peace Tomosime, Madame Margaret Wallstrom, the World Bank Vice President, the EU representative. First of all, I'd like to say that we, ClimDev, first of all, ClimDev Special Fund is part of the wider ClimDev Africa program. We, ClimDev Special Fund, are responsible for the implementation of result area number 3 within the program, which is the support to regional climate centers across Africa. But we're also working with national hydro and meteorological centers as well. So basically, our main results areas is the support to regional climate centers, but also trying to harmonize the harmonization of the climate weather data in terms of data collection, analysis, and dissemination. We're also building the capacity of the personnel within those regional centers. We are also working with communities to build resilience at their level. As you know, and as was alluded to by the Commissioner, many parts of Africa are being affected by mainly drought and floods, and therefore we're working with communities at the grassroots level to ensure that they can cope with those hazards that face them. But another important aspect that we're looking at is the partnerships that have been built around this program, and this is we see this program as an added impetus to the work that we're already doing. As I speak now, at the moment, we're already we're doing appraisal missions to 3 climate centers, regional climate centers. And we're looking towards working on the other 2, the South African Regional Climate Center and the Central African Climate Center. So with the partnership that we're building with the World Bank, mainly the Global Fund for Disaster and Risk Reduction, we're working towards facilitating the national hydro and meteorological centers. And this is an initiative that we're working together with the World Meteorological Organization. This initiative was launched only last month, and we're now putting into the working modalities on how we'll be able to undertake it. So we are very grateful to the EU and to the other partners that we're working together on this program, and we look forward to the successful implementation of this program through the collaborative support that we're working on. So, ladies and gentlemen, in short and in a nutshell, this is what we'll be doing under the program. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for bringing the African Development Bank expertise, particularly around the training centres and the climate and the National Hydromet Services. We're running very short of time, so what I'd like to do is just, before I ask Madam Rhoda Peace and also Mr. Rodolfo for their very quick summaries and also what they're focusing on results, just their concluding remarks, just for 1 minute. I'll just open it up to the floor if there's any questions or points of clarification while you have these panellists here. Now's the time to ask a question or two, and then I'll ask to summarise, and then I'll finish up. Is there any questions from the floor? Any clarification? Yes, please.
Thank you. It's Inga Vesper from SciDev.net. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about how you will support data collection efforts in Sub-Saharan African countries, and whether you will work directly with and fund statistical offices in those countries.
Okay, any more? I'll just take 2 or 3 and then we'll have to move on. No. I think that might be World Bank. It's on data collection, so Hartwig, could you answer?
I think one thing is to work with statistical offices, but I think you know that that doesn't give you the data that when you need it. And I think one of the areas that we need is an early warning system. And we just recently put the Hydromet system in place, which provides real-time data on rainfall conditions so that we can actually respond much better, much faster to drought situations like we saw in the Horn of Africa or in the Sahel. This is actually also some of the areas where we are working across countries where it's a sub-regional work that is going on. I know from other countries that our agricultural projects, for instance, include very much weather observation data and so on that are state of the art, so that we can actually give the farmer, it's not only a warning system, but we can also give the farmers much more precise information and guidance on how they, when and how much they should use in terms of planting season, fertilizer, and so on. I think this is also disconnects to a panel that I was on yesterday with regard to science and technology and innovation. I mean, the two go hand in hand. You can't have freestanding projects for either one, but it all has to be integrated in our approach.
Okay, good, thank you. Well, let's move towards the close. I'd ask the African Union Commission and Madame Rhoda Peace just to outline some of the results you were expecting, and also some concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Moderator. As you have heard, this program really calls upon all of us to work in concerted effort, to work together in partnership. Otherwise, we shall not be able to deliver the much needed highlighted areas, result areas. So the agencies have indicated the result areas, but all of them are very closely related. As far as the African Union Commission is concerned, it is the main coordinating body for this activity, and will have to support also the implementation of the programs both at regional and at country level. That means we must have the capacity strengthened at the Commission, but also we have to work with the regional economic communities to ensure that they have the capacity to deliver on the stated objectives. We envisage, of course, putting in place a mechanism for that. We have to be undertaking issues related to monitoring also at the country level, working with the regional economic communities and ensuring that we deliver. The working with the UNISDR, of course, the country office, the regional office for Africa, we have to be having several meetings to ensure that we have coordination. The steering committee, the meetings have to take place, and this time we must have all the partners on board. We must ensure that data is generated, then it has to be disseminated, and also we must ensure that the key activities under the program are really undertaken. But for African Union, I must really inform you that there is commitment, there is political commitment at the African Union level. There is commitment at the regional economic communities. There is commitment at the country level. So with all this really political support, and then now getting the facilitating element of resources and technical support of the resources, which will be strengthened by bringing more people, I believe that we should be able to deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Lopez. Before I pass on to Mr. Rodolfo, SRSG wanted just a quick word, Margareta.
Yeah, sorry. I had hoped that someone would ask the question, but since no one asked the question, you know, I think this program, first of all, it's a really excellent initiative. It's quite unique of its kind, and of course, I hope we will see many more. Not only supported by the European Commission, but also other multilateral institutions. It helps focus, and in this particular case, it really helps focus on building capacity for what we know needs to be done. But always when we see this kind of thing, we say, okay, then what? So my proposal is that along this program, of course, more partners will be needed, because a lot of the countries that will now have stronger and stronger capacity for implementation, they will also need partnership for the implementation. So at the end of this road, and this is really the call from Sendai, let's work hard to launch partnerships that assist countries that genuinely need it to implement as well, because if you put everything else in place and then you come to the implementation and we have moved on. We won't move on. But so why here, with the support of Europe, under the guidance of ACP, Africa Union Commissions, strong regional institutions and global entities, I think we need more. We need more engagement, and I think Hartwig mentioned the challenges of bringing in the private sector, but maybe this can be sort of a test case of how it can be done in the wider partnership. So that's my only reflection, that I wanted to invite more to the partnership so it doesn't sound like a club. Okay, now
I will not take long, but I wanted to underline the importance of the meeting which Mr. Hawig has announced, the Vice President of the World Bank Group, which will take place in November. It's a joint meeting, AU World Bank, and I believe that in this meeting we should be able to have more issues focused on. But also to say that we have an institutional framework which governs the Africa Action Program. We have the Africa Working Group. This one is normally convened also by the African Union, but also we have the ministerial. So these are important kind of stakeholder institutional issues which we have to be dealing with, and they have to be dealt with by the stakeholders themselves, ministers, technical people, together with the regional economic communities and member states. Thank you.
No, thank you for those additional comments and thoughts. They are very useful. I'll give Mr. Rolfo the final say before I close. Thank you.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it, that we are celebrating your partnership, but the only one putting money is the European Union. Actually, this is not true. This is not true. And I appreciate the call from the special representative to have more and many. I can see from the budget that there is a co-financing of 8 million against the 80 million of the EU grant. So on partnership, I think we have to do more. Let's be honest. Today is a partnership in which one pays and the other do. And we shall have a partnership where everybody pays more and everybody does more. And I am looking at you, Vice President. Especially the World Bank should be more generous in this kind of endeavors. But we are partners in many other initiatives. We are going from side event to side event here. Let me come to the point. Perhaps we can catch up even with this project. Subsidiarity is well done here. Subsidiarity is do at national level what you can do at national level, a regional what you can do at regional, and a continental what you must do at continental. This is very true. I had an opposite position in CADEP in Johannesburg, saying that we don't want a continental action if it's more suitable at national level. Where I had a position, and again, I was at odds with a number of partners, because we have to say the truth to each other, or at least what we believe in. But I think we can catch up on both aspects if we push on leveraging. And I think the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and your political leadership as UNSDR, you can do it. The essential of what we are launching today is prepare, having plans, and these plans must contain the very conducive environment for private sector investments. We talk about insurances, we talk about crop insurance, we talk about vulnerabilities in cities, because disaster risk reduction coincides with climate change adaptation to a large extent. So if you are now in the planning, in the policy making of the response, catering for private-led investments, then you will have to catch up on this, that the EU is only paying the bill. because that will be well spent money and will be indeed for the future generations a very, very good welcoming attitude. I've been ambassador in the Pacific, so the Pacific Islands, in Fiji, Samoa, Tuvalu, cyclones, female names, male names, no matter what, they were destroying everything. In Africa, I was in Malawi. I remember a cycle of droughts and floods and droughts, terrible. You try to adapt to a drought and then the floods come. Then you try to adapt to the flood and a drought comes. El Niño, La Niña. And of course, this is an aspect that we are not mastering quite obviously. The uncertainty of natural disasters. That's why data and forecast. But we know that in meteorology, anything above 2 weeks is just pure invention, isn't it? Now, I conclude, sir. This has been an important event, but please, let's remember subsidiarity, partnership and leveraging in a full manner so that we can really hope for this kind of aspects to be perhaps even already presented in Paris as a positive traction towards a climate change agreement worldwide. Thank you.
No, thank you for those good closing remarks to inspire us to do some more. Look, I won't go through the summary, just to say that we've officially launched now this Building Disaster Resilience to Natural Hazards in the Sub-Saharan Africa. You've heard all the panellists and also all the partners and what they've been going to bring to this new initiative, and also the call for more partnerships and more resources to work together much harder. So before closing, I just want to all of us to thank collectively the panellists who were very excellent today in their presentations. Thank you. Okay, I now declare this closed. Thank you very much for coming.